7.8 billion. 7.8 billion people live on our earth today. As the world begins to urbanize and modernize its societies, the world's population begins to increase. The largest population change, which was more than double, was within the last century, from 1950 to 1987. At the beginning of the 20th century, 1.6 billion people lived on our earth. That number has increased by 5.4 billion in just 100 years, from 1.6 billion in 1900 to 6 billion in 2000, making it the fastest population change in Earth's history within a century. With such a large world population, concerns about overpopulation have been surfacing in the last couple of decades. When we look at where the majority of people live on Earth, it is on the continent of Asia. More than half of the world lives in just one sphere of influence in the continent of Asia, which includes countries like India, China, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, etc. Hans Rosling, who was a former guest on TED Talk in 2010, pointed out that the poorest people in the world will be the facilitators of future population growth. Today I will be discussing the causes of overpopulation and its profound effects on those living within Asia. Looking at the basic causes of overpopulation, such as a lack of family planning, underutilized contraception, lack of sexual education, and a falling mortality rate, they can all be found within the poorest regions of Asia. The lack of family planning, the lack of sexual education is typically found in the rural parts of these countries, where people have numerous children at a time because they aren't educated on the use of contraception, or it is considered taboo in their region or their culture, or are hoping to have a child that can survive in the conditions that they live in. Additionally, many of the people living in poverty in Asia are those that work blue-collar jobs, especially in factories. When looking at the rankings of the top 10 manufacturing countries in the world, you'll find that half of them are located in that sphere of influence that I mentioned earlier, and most of them are located on the continent of Asia. 5 of the top 10 manufacturing countries belong to the region with the highest population density in the world, that sphere of influence. China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and India all belong to that sphere of influence that carry more than half of the world's population. China and India are 2 of the world's most populous countries as well. Now, who do these countries manufacture for? Well, countries like India and China, who are major players in the world trading market, manufacture for major trading partners, especially those belonging to the West, like the United States or Canada. With many of the world's manufacturers belonging to these countries, one might be quick to relate resource depletion to these manufacturers. However, I think it's important that we as everyday people acknowledge that we contribute to the mess that is overpopulation. While these manufacturing companies are depleting our sources at a rate faster than intended, we are the ones demanding that they do so. What's the first place you think of for online shopping? Amazon or eBay? In 2017, Amazon emitted 19 million metric tons of carbon into the air, most likely depleting our world's fossil fuel source, which is finite. It has come to my attention that there are also fast fashion companies like Shein who exploit their workers around the world to make these cheap clothes and all together contribute to the issue that is resource depletion. Now, I know that there is no ethical consumption under a capitalist society, but it is important that we do not solely blame large companies, but we also take blame upon ourselves. Major manufacturing companies continue to exploit the little resources that we have left for our growing population. And the reason these companies continue to do so, continue to run, is because of our support. Some of these countries have had to impose their own overpopulation tactics to facilitate a human population that can survive with the resources we have currently and will have in the future. China's famous one-child policy has been used as a tactic to lower China's highest population. And while it did work, it left many people traumatized, having to hide a second child, having to abort a child that they dearly wanted, or putting it up for adoption. When I was in 11th grade, I was writing a research paper on homelessness for my global politics class. I had to talk about the political views that justify homelessness, and I stumbled upon Thomas Malthus. I'm sure a few of you know who he is, but I was shocked to hear his views on homelessness and those who live in poverty. Thomas Malthus had the controversial view that people have to be sacrificed because of overpopulation. He estimated at one point that there will be more people than resources, which theoretically is true at the rate that we are going at. But he estimated it to be much worse than it is now. Now, why do I bring this up? We constantly hear about overpopulation and how it is an end-all be-all situation. It is often argued that Malthus's argument is outdated and does not apply to the real world. But his view had consequences for how people treat the situation of overpopulation today. The mistreatment of homeless people, or those in low-income families, as well as the shame imposed upon them, is a direct result of Malthus's view and is indicative of our philosophy behind overpopulation. Whether people like it or not, we are conditioned to believe that one person's life matters more than another in the case of overpopulation. Even looking at ethics, people tend to take utilitarian approaches to overpopulation, saying that if a few people die from overpopulation, that's okay since everyone else gets to live freely. The idea of sacrificing others runs rampant in our society. I remember a couple of days ago, I heard someone say that even though the COVID-19 virus was still out there, risking the lives of a few people was worth bringing back the economy. This notion of sacrifice has diminished our humanity and our unity as a human race. We have moved from egalitarian societies to societies with hierarchies. And this has conditioned us to believe that the lesser man must sacrifice himself for the betterment of everyone else. In the case of overpopulation, those living in the regions with the highest populations are working in manufacturing factories for the world's 1 to 2% of wealthy people. Since these factories and these major corporations are what is causing a majority of the resource depletion that is backing the fear of overpopulation tactics will be put in place for them. Those who live in the continent of Asia will suffer the most, as they will be the ones having overpopulation tactics imposed on them above everyone else. With the majority of people belonging to the continent of Asia, Asian people living in poverty will suffer most of the consequences of resource depletion that is being forced upon them by major corporations. The depletion of resources is not just a fault of one group. It is a collective cause that the entire world's population has created, so we must work together to fix it. Sustainability. Now, this is a word that you most likely have heard in your lifetime, but might not know the full meaning of. Sustainability is the practice of humans coexisting with our world's natural systems and resources. In an increasingly materialistic world, sustainability has been pushed aside to invite major corporations to boost their sales and contribute further to the problem of resource depletion. However, I invite you to incorporate some level of sustainability in your life. And I know that it is very difficult to incorporate into your entire lifestyle. Some people, like those who practice veganism or zero waste, might have the resources to do so and can live a completely sustainable life. But I know that it isn't ideal or realistic for the everyday person. I encourage everyone here today to go out and buy one piece of clothing from a sustainable brand or buy a cheap reusable water bottle. Most people have the facilities to do small things every day that can make a world of a difference to someone across the world who is facing the consequences of the world's resource depletion. Some of my favorite ways to be more sustainable at home is shopping at thrift stores, which has become fairly popular amongst teenagers, or buying reusable items such as tote bags and water bottles, or even reusing an item until it has completely worn out, since you are making the most out of your products before buying another one. You can also limit your expenses from these major corporations, such as Amazon, Shein, AliExpress, Coca-Cola, etc. It is also extremely important to advocate for environmental legislation that places limits on the level of pollution and depletion of resources that a major company can take. We cannot stop our population from increasing without limiting human freedom to some extent. So I encourage you to use your resources wisely and responsibly. because it will make a world of a difference to someone who will be facing the fear of overpopulation in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.